I'd like to introduce the candidates who are running for San Jose City Council District 5. Of course, one of the candidates who could not be here is Magdalena Carrasco. And other two candidates are Danny Garza and Jennifer Imhoff.
Jennifer Imhoff is fine.
Jennifer Imhoff, okay, thank you. And we'll begin now by having, we let Jennifer and Danny pick numbers, and Jennifer got the one, so she'll make her opening statement first.
Greetings, everybody. Thank you for coming out. My name is Jennifer Imhoff, and I know that's not a common name in the community yet, but that doesn't mean I haven't been a part of your community. I have been working at the community level, at the city level, and at the county level. I've been showing up to board meetings. I've been representing different issues. I stood watch over Pentencia Creek during last year's flooding with my ham radio in hand, making sure you got a warning on your phone and not a headline in your newsletters. I have worked at domestic violence shelters and with your local community groups to teach data privacy, both to kids and to other adults. I've also worked at schools teaching diversity in technology and also encouraging civic engagement. I'm running because I'm not a politician. I'm here to serve you as a civic leader and to encourage community growth. Thank you.
Mr. Garza.
I want to thank Juan and League of Women Voters for putting this on. The League supported my father years ago. My dad's Al Garza, and if you've been around for a long time, you know what that means.
I really have to correct. We might have supported him as an elected official, perhaps, and supported, as you would any, but we did not support him.
Correct.
We support the work they do.
Correct. I'm not a spectator. That's why I'm running. 8 neighborhood association leaders asked me to run. And that's what I'm going to do, because I represent the community as best I can, as often as I can, wherever I can. Los Sueños, Plata Arroyo, Mayfair, Cassell, Arbuckle, Hillview, Sierra, and Capital Goss. Those are all the neighborhoods that asked me to run. Domestic violence, I've been a counselor for Men's Anger Management Group. I started First 5 when it was Children and Families First. And I've been coaching for 23 years.
I'm going to start with a very broad question. Both of you briefly responded to it to some extent in terms of telling us why you want to run and what is the most important thing that you want to do if you were to become city council member.
Hi, I'm running because I feel like I was kind of forced here. There were issues in my community that weren't getting addressed. I couldn't find a place to dump large items. I couldn't address speeders. Every time I tried to get more and more involved, I found more and more things that were missing out of our community. So the number one thing I want to represent is communication and getting information out to you, not just the people who are in homeowners associations or neighborhood associations, but to all the neighbors. Making sure that the information is there is the first step to building a community.
Mr. Garza?
Yes, the most important things to me, and this is what I've been saying the whole time, is neighborhoods. Neighborhoods are the eyes in the East Valley. They're on the streets every day. If we don't have neighborhood associations more than what we have now, then the crime is not going to go anywhere. It's going to stay put. The things that I feel are most important after neighborhoods is parks. If we don't have a park in our neighborhood, we don't have a neighborhood. After parks comes police and fire, and that's a given. So, what I would do for communication with these neighborhoods is I would open an off-site office. The off-site office will be somewhere around the Mexican Heritage Plaza, if not right across the street. That blighted building will belong to the city.
I was told as a young girl, remember the first 3 words about assumption. The first 3 letters. So It seems obvious that you, I assume, live in District 5, but quickly just answer yes or no. Do you live in District 5?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you. It's a question that was asked. Several you mentioned different issues. I'd like to ask specifically one about housing. There are quite a few questions asking about concerns about homelessness. How do you plan to provide a sustainable response, an effective response to address the issue of homelessness? Mr. Garza, would you start?
Homelessness is a great issue right now. We can't just ask and build homeless shelters. This has to be done in an intelligent way. We can't build the homeless shelters, not homeless shelters, the housing like they want to put next to the Encantada. They want to bring that in, put that up without dealing with Allen Rock Avenue, the in and out of that parking lot. Not only will issues like that hurt the community, but the community that lives there now will not be able to get in and out of their homes and neighborhoods to go to work, especially at commute hours. So we need to find a way to intelligently address homelessness.
Ms. Inman?
There's a lot of different reasons for homelessness, and there's going to be no one cure to this and no one way to address it. So I don't think that the city is going to have this perfect solution for you, but what the city can do is facilitate an answer with the many different community groups that are out there, from churches to the nonprofits. There's people who focus on vets, there's people who focus on mental illness, and we need to work together to create a ladder so that way people can climb out of homelessness and work from one organization to the next.
Following up on the issue of housing, it's a question about the different types of housing that is being proposed, such as small homes, accessory dwelling units, what they call granny units as well. How do you feel about these as solutions? Would you support them, and why? And Ms. Imhoff, why don't we start with you?
Similarly, there's a lot of different ways we can fix our housing issue, and we should approach all of them. District 5 specifically, we already have people doing the grandma units, and they're sublacing. A lot of these are going under the table, and I think we should make it easier for them to be documented, because then we can better account how much parking is there, how many people are living. This became a problem with the flooding, where a lot of people did not get assistance because they weren't accounted for. So the best thing we can do is approach the solutions that are already there. We have a lot of different housing opportunities already in the works, and I think the city's just not doing enough to tell you what those are and where they're going to be and what the status are. So that would be the first thing I would do.
Mr. Garza?
So the granny units are fine, as long as they fit code, as long as they work with planning. The other thing that has to be done to prevent overcrowding and negatively impacting our community is there has to be parking. You have to have driveway. If you don't have a driveway, you better have enough parking in front of your house according to the city rules. If not, all you're doing is moving homeless from one place to another and negatively impacting another neighborhood.
Another question on housing, and that is, although Mr. Gaza, you alluded to it, often the addition of granny units or accessory housing adds tremendously to two things: additional traffic, as well as potential for blight. And there's great concern about issues of blight, and we'll go into that a little bit later. But how do you balance those two concerns and issues, the desire to provide that extra housing for people who need it, at the same time resolving the problems of traffic, solving the issue with ensuring that blight does not happen? And since Mr. Gaza, you're standing, why don't you start?
I'm sorry.
No, I'm pretty sure it was your turn.
Okay, so in our neighborhood, we're fighting with this now. And the issue is code enforcement. If you want to fix this, if you want to make it right, you make sure that the city does their work. Get code enforcement out there, get code enforcement involved. If they're not, then you're creating another problem. And we don't need that in our community. We need to move forward, not backwards. Moving this problem from one side to another is not helping anybody. Now, blight's another story. If you don't, if code enforcement is not addressing the blight in our issues with people parking on their lawn, with not mowing lawns, with extra trash all around, code enforcement in the city has to do their job. Otherwise, the granny units will never work.
Ms. Imhoff?
I think a lot of the blight is a systematic problem from the overcrowding that we're having. When people are overcrowded in a house, then they need to get creative with parking. They have more trash than they are accounted for. And they also have large items that they're trying to get rid of that end up on a corner and then disappear and end up on more corners. So the best thing we can do is help these people be accounted for so we can readjust our garbage collection, we can readjust our large item collection, we can also readjust our parking. So encouraging people to account for themselves. I think a lot of, especially immigrants, they don't want to be accounted for, and so we need to approach that delicately. Encouraging people to, pay their fees. We need to lower the cost of these permits so that they can go on the documentation and we can know how many people are out there.
I'm going to finalize another housing question that I missed earlier, and that was, again, back to homelessness. If you were given an unrestricted budget to address homelessness, what would be your 1, 2, and 3-year plan of action? What would you do? Well, it's wonderful to think you can never have someone with an unlimited budget, but if you have the money to do something efficiently and I'm sure effectively, what would you do to address homelessness? Ms. Imhoff.
Well, with an unlimited budget, I think the first year plan would be find shelter and get them all accounted for. That way we know who we're dealing with, what problems we're dealing with, and the best way to solve them. The third year plan would be to help facilitate different organizations to address these different problems. And the 5-year plan would be create, again, this ladder. We get people into a program, and then we don't know how to get them into the next step. We get people into affordable housing, but then we don't get them out into normal, residency. So we need to create that ladder system, and this would be what I would focus on if I had that unlimited budget.
Mr. Garza, same question.
I've thought about this for a long time. Since Ronald Reagan closed Agnews, our issues have exploded. So the first thing I would do with an unlimited budget is I would build a hospital. And this would be a psychiatric hospital as well as a medical facility. Because 60% of our homeless admit to being mentally ill. 30% of them don't get help. We have to open up those doors for them to get them into these facilities. The outreach, it can be there. We can get them there. We can get them into the hospital. We can get them help. We can get them medication. We can get them housing. We can get them services and training and jobs. The jobs are coming. And they're willing to go when they have the help they need.
Okay, this is a quickie question, but I've got to follow up through each of them. Are you for or against rent control? Ms. Imhoff.
No, I'm not.
Mr. Garza.
I'm for rent control, and I'll tell you why. Years ago, when we were living on Park Avenue, right on the edge of San Jose, the manager wanted to increase our rent from $600 to $900 for 1 bedroom. And we went to rent control. And the city helped us. We went into the court, and the other residents of our neighborhood, of our apartment complex, refused to go. They didn't want to go. They got scared by the attorney from the apartment complex. Well, they lost. We won. We got our rent lowered by that $300. And rent control works if you do it right.
All right, following up on that, and to be fair, there is a follow-up question on rent control. Ms. Imhoff didn't have a chance to speak to that. And one of you said you support rent control, and one of you said you don't support it. Didn't have a chance for Ms. Inhofe to explain why. I will say that there's a follow-up question for both of you to respond to. How will you work to make sure mom and pop landlords whose rents are controlled and limited will still be able to maintain and manage older rent-controlled buildings?
So I think the best way we can handle this is by encouraging more inventory, and that's going to be the most natural way to do that. With rent control, one of the problems I always see is that, again, people get into it and then we're not getting them out. How do you encourage that growth in the community? We have a lot of storefronts that are empty right now, and that ghost town makes it hard to fill these spots, and then things go downhill from there. So we need to encourage filling all these empty vacancies, not only in businesses, but in houses too. So increasing inventory is going to be the most effective way to find a sustainable answer.
Yay, thank
Mr.
you.
Garza?
So, let me have that question again, please.
Yeah. So the question is, how do you protect or ensure that a mom and pop or a small a landlord is able to, given rent control and the limited places of the revenue that the owner can charge, how are they going to be able to maintain their buildings?
This is where code enforcement comes in. If the building is so dilapidated that it needs so much money to be repaired, where was code enforcement years ago when it was cheap? Now that prices are sky high, rents are sky high, the landowners the prices they're going to have to pay to retrofit that are so out of control that now we're paying the price for that. And again, this is my point. We need the city to be responsible, and they're not. And that's going to change. If not with me, with both of us.
What related to housing, though, is, and you talked about traffic and the impact of more housing sometimes meaning more traffic. What about parking? Parking seems to be an issue by several people who've asked questions about it. What can be done about parking in our neighborhoods? Mr. Garza?
Again, this is planning and code enforcement that has failed the residents. In our neighborhood, in Plata Arroyo, we have complained about, we have people double parking, and we can't get parking compliance out there at night. If there's a fire, our fire trucks will never get past these cars. So, parking issues, if you have a driveway, then it's okay to have extra people living there, because then you can park on the street. If you don't, then code enforcement needs to be involved, and they're not. They're not. That's the issue. Getting code enforcement in the city to respond. We have the tax base is coming in. We've got more money now than we had before. We need to hire more services, more people to service the city, residents. And without that, we're just going to keep having light. We're going to have parking issues. We're going to have double park. We're not going to be able to get police and fire into our neighborhoods.
Ms. Inhofe?
So the first thing we need to do is communicate with our residents. There is a multitude of organizations out there that will help get this dilapidated cars off the road. I've personally gone through this. We're trying to get rid of a vehicle that is either non-opt or maybe it's not in your name. In my case, it was a father who had a stroke and couldn't drive anymore. I couldn't get rid of the car. It was a huge ordeal, and so it just sat there. Getting the information out to people about places that they can get rid of vehicles is going to be the first step. The other thing is we've been constantly bypassed for the light rail and for the BART. So getting public transit to the East Valley is going to be the first thing that we need to do. And that way people don't have to park their cars. They don't have to drive everywhere. They should be able to light rail down to Elm Rock Village and then have their cup of coffee or get to school.
Thank you. Both of you referred in different answers to the importance of the need for code enforcement. So the question is, how would you improve the response time and efficiency of code enforcement and making sure that it happens? Obviously, there seems to be a lot of discussion that there's not adequate code enforcement happening in District 5. What would you do if you're elected city council member to improve the response time and efficiency of code enforcement? Ms. Inhofe, yes.
Our city planning department has gone through a lot of changes. I've worked in architecture, I've worked in geotech, and I've worked in different fields that have allowed me that front row seat to see what goes on with planning issues, and that includes code enforcement. So encouraging this new staff to get on their feet and also strengthening their power. Currently, the city is constantly trying to take power away from this planning commission. We need to give them more power so that they can respond to these issues in a more effective way.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
So my views are right there, just like that. We need to give our code enforcement officers personnel on the job, not just the ones we have, but more. So our code enforcement officers are not alone. The other thing we need to do is we need to track our officers. What are they doing? What are our dollars doing with code enforcement? If we're not happy, if they're saying that on the city website, if they're saying they've had a problem and we know it, if we know there's a car that's there and it's not moving and they've said they've taken care of it, what's the truth? Open government, sunshine, that's what we need.
I say transparency and open government is something the league has always been very much in support of.
I appreciate that.
Well, moving on to another whole big area of concern by a lot of people, and that seems to be the whole issue of graffiti, garbage in the community, in the neighborhood. So the question really has to do what can be done. The streets are, according to this, are littered, and there doesn't seem to be adequate street sweeping in the district. What solutions do you propose to clean up streets and highways? And perhaps more important, what do you see as the ability to address the root causes of the litter that seems to be very prevalent in District 5? Mr. Garza, we'll start with you.
So, if you look around, you're going to see neighborhoods that are not blighted, and you're going to see neighborhoods that are. Why is that? That's because there's people that call, and there's people that don't call. The city supports the people that call, and the people that don't call get left out. That's unfair, because our families don't have the ability to sit there at home and call and say, you know what, this car's been sitting here for 3.5 days. Or this blight has been here for a week. Our parents are working. They're working 2 jobs. Our children are taking care of children. We have latchkey kids that should never have a key in their hand. They're too young. So what has to happen is the city needs to get off their butt, fix the potholes in our street, get the blight taken care of, and protect our community and children that way. Because our children learn what they see.
Ms. Inhofe?
So to fix the blight, littering, and graffiti from a more systematic way, I want to encourage pride in our community. And this seems, very like a holistic approach, but this was actually very successful in Texas, where they had the same problem and they instituted a slogan, "Don't mess with Texas." That slogan encouraged children to be proud of their community. They stopped throwing their gum on the floor, they stopped throwing their litter on the roads, and they stopped tagging. San Jose's East Valley has a problem with a negative attitude. We have a negative image. And so encouraging us to be proud in our community is going to be the way to solve this on a longer effort. On a shorter effort, the city needs to put pressure on Caltrans and the existing organizations to do their job.
Actually, you mentioned Caltrans. It's interesting because there was a question about Caltrans. Obviously, street cleaning is a function both of the city, for city streets, but highways, which people often refer to as being very littered, are usually the responsibility of Caltrans. Well, it's a big state agency, Department of Transportation. I mean, it's got literally thousands of miles of how would you, as a little city council member, I was like little, but one city council member among thousands throughout the state, how do you get Caltrans to come in and clean freeways? Because that is the question that's asked. What would you do? How would you approach that? Inhofe?
Well, I would, as a city council member, do the same thing to Caltrans that our residents do to the city council, and that's just bug them. And every day hold them accountable. Now, the city usually addresses these issues as a whole, and it gets very unevenly distributed, where the northern side of the town and the western side of the town have very clean streets. But it's coming from the same budget, and why is that being distributed differently? So I would put pressure on the council as a whole to make sure that the District 5 gets its even share.
Mr. Garza?
Currently, I sit with the State of California Department of Transportation Small Business Council. What we don't see is we don't see cities asking for money to help the communities. So San Jose had something like $40 million 3 years ago to fix up our intersections. San Ricardo only asked for 11. Our current councilman hasn't done anything with that. That's what we have to do. Like she said, we need to put pressure on not only all our city council members, but on Caltrans, because the money is there, believe me. They have money for high-speed rail. They have money for all the rail that's coming now. Look at the bridges, look at the concrete, look what's coming. They have the money. They need to respond financially to our community.
You mentioned Caltrans, but another important large transportation system that's coming is BART into the community. How, not personally from District 5, so I'm not sure exactly where the BART alignment is, but how do you see BART impacting District 5? And how would you plan to help mitigate any negative impacts that might come about because of the BART construction and the development of BART? And what would you do? Mitigating any negative impacts such as traffic or other things. Ms. Inhofe, can we start with you?
BART coming down here is going to be a big issue. We see it all over our news. Right now, the radio is just reporting about the hypodermic needles just on my way driving here. I think our first priority would be to focus on the light rail and getting the light rail to the original promises of down to the mall on the other side. That's a whole side that's being neglected. Now, the first thing I would do as City Council would be to work with our County Sheriff Department, because they're going to be the most accessible to facilitate the issue, to getting the right staff out there. And then I would also work in conjunction with the City of San Jose's Police Department. Making sure that all three of us are at a table working together is the only solution.
Thank you. Ms. Garza.
So, BART, I've sat with the Alum Rock Small Business Association years ago when BART first started. They said that BART is going to be great for everybody. Businesses are going to prosper. It's a lie. It's not going to happen. BART is going to impact our neighborhoods negatively. Construction, traffic, vibration. So, what are we going to do? We can't do anything yet because BART's coming. We will address those safety issues that she's addressing in the future. Plata Arroyo Neighborhood Association, when we sat with the Small Business Association years ago, we demanded that BART police, the sheriffs, and San Jose police have no boundaries at any site in the city. That means the police can go on BART property to make arrests. They don't have to be re-asked. They don't have to be requested by 911. They just go. Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of safety. Talk a little bit about traffic, but this is really safety concerns with regard to the perception. This questioner says that the district is having an increase in theft, thieves, burglaries, and perhaps even physical harm to young people in the community. Would you address yourself to the needs or public safety? On the one hand, things like burglaries or just pure safety. The other side of that question, and maybe it's a two-part question, so I'm going to give you maybe 2 minutes. Okay. So the one hand, public safety, general kinds of things. The other is really the issue of long-term major catastrophic things, such as earthquakes, disasters, flooding. how do you see the city and the city council, and if you were a city council member, doing something along these lines to address those two issues? One, general safety issues, the other, catastrophic safety. And it'll be a 2-minute response. We'll start with Ms. Imhoff.
Okay. When it comes to the rise in crime here in District 5, the statistics are true that things are rising here, even though they're going down everywhere else. Car theft in specific is the one that's up high. The best thing that we need to do is start working with our city police and our sheriffs. There is a disconnect in communication between those two organizations. I personally have sat out there and had to have both on the phone just to get them to address a house party because neither one wanted to admit it was whose turf it was. It was about 10 minutes of yelling at them both to show up before they both finally showed up. And they only gave a ticket because the kid in the house was being smart. So we have a problem with communication between those organizations, and our city should be responsible for facilitating that communication. On top of that, we need to facilitate a proactive response for the major disasters. It's not if, it's when the next earthquake is going to hit. It's not if, it's when the next flooding is going to hit. I know it was a once in a 100-year flood, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't be proactive now. I actually have FEMA certificates behind my belt. I am a ham radio officer, licensed operator. So first response is a huge priority of mine. I've worked as a first responder to many accidents, including a pedestrian and a light rail, a lot of pedestrian and cars, and I see this firsthand. So being able to roll up my sleeves and get in there, I know how important this is to everybody's life. And getting training out there and making sure everyone's prepared, working with San Jose's RACES, these are the things that a city council member can do.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
So public safety. I've been a champion for sports for our children forever. I've been coaching since 1991. My oldest played hardball, and she's a tough little girl. She ended up on our Olympic team in 2000, wrestling for. She was the first alternate to our women's wrestling team. My daughter right here is Victoria. Raise your hand, yeah. This is my USA All-American. Okay? If you get your kids in sports, you're not going to have that trouble because they're going to have time for 3 things: sports, homework, and sleep.
Do you want to address the...
No, what was that? Was that 1 minute?
No.
Oh, I was going to do them one on one.
Yeah.
So I was waiting for the yellow card. So seriously, we need to get our kids involved. Our parents need to understand that there is something else out there for our children that will lead them away from the negative people that are in our community. And that's what they're seeing now. They're seeing those gangs. They're seeing the flash that turns dull after a while. So now the long-term issues we have in Plata Arroyo, when we had our NAC, we had a box that had earthquake supplies, from diapers to blankets to water. We need to have those in all our neighborhood associations, all of them. There needs to be food. I don't care if it's powdered food. There needs to be water. Because we need to have water for 3 days. I don't care if we get 2 of those big job boxes. That has to be in our neighborhoods because we're going to have to wait. Reed Hillview Airport will not be able to handle all of our needs. So we're going to have to take care of ourselves. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a very specific question there, which I'd like you to answer. Would you support a police substation in District 5? And I'm going to add to this question by asking you to discuss if you support or don't support it, why would you support it, how would you fund it, and where would you put it? Really put you on the spot. So, would you support a police substation in District 5, and then fill it in? Why, where, and how?
My initial response is going to be no, because I don't have enough information to say that that's what's needed. I feel like our San Jose Police has just hired a whole bunch of new recruits, and we need to get them trained, we need to get them out there, and we also need to make sure that these police are evenly distributed before we dump a bunch of money into creating a substation. Let's address the problem as it is, and then we can evaluate, because really I think a lot of our problems are simple enough. It's a lot of lost kids, it's a lot of bored kids, that if we can get them the right help, we wouldn't need a substation.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
So, I would support a substation. And I'll tell you where I'll put it. I'll put it right next to my office on Alum Rock Avenue, across from the Mexican Heritage Plaza. There's parking there. The police need a place that they can be seen at. They need a place where people can understand what they're doing when they go in and talk to an officer. That's not the place to address a complaint, but you know what? That's a place to ask questions. That's what we need. The substation, I really like the substation when I was at Tropicana, because being there halted a lot of the fake licenses and the other things that were being made there. And the community there, I know the Tropicana area, all the way to Ocala, felt a lot safer with the families that I knew coaching. So, thank you.
I'd like to turn now to sort of the community. And there are many nonprofits who do some wonderful work in this community. We're very fortunate, I think, in San Jose to have many wonderful community groups. When you talk about what work you might have done with community groups, and how would you work with them if you were the city council?
I've done a lot of work with community groups. A lot of them are your non-traditional ones. I've worked with a lot of technology-focused diversity in technology, increasing women specifically, and finding them mentors here in the Valley, or in the Silicon Valley. So making sure that people from the east side of San Jose are involved in that industry has always been a passion of mine. I've also been involved in a lot of nonprofits that address things like San Jose's Races and emergency preparedness. These are unknown to a lot of people, and so I would, as a city council member, make sure all these different organizations are aware of each other, are working together, and are talking to you, the community members.
Mr. Garza?
So during this campaign, I put together a list of the things that I've done, of the organizations I belong to. And of course, they're all nonprofit. I'm the chapter chair for the Mexican American Political Association. I chair the La Raza Roundtable High-Speed Rail Committee. I also chair their outreach committee. But what needs to happen is these organizations, all of them, NAACP, everybody, the churches, the schools, they all need to talk to each other. Because without that, we're pulling in different directions. As city councilman, I would sit everybody down, bring them to a table, and say, this is where we got to go. How do you want to do it? How do you want to do it? And then we're going to find a happy medium, and we're going to get this done. Because we are falling farther and farther behind in the East Valley.
Our next question is very specific, and I suspect that this must be from someone who's very concerned about the Alum Rock Youth Center. The question is, what could you do and what would you do to reopen the Alum Rock Youth Center so it'll be used fully by the entire community? Mr. Garza?
There has to be more funding for the Alum Rock Youth Center. I mean, we need to have the right equipment there. We need to have more people there sitting in that office, administering to all those kids. If our kids don't have a place to play, guess what? They're going to be playing in your house when you're not home. So that is the major function of the Alum Rock Youth Center. That's what Manny built it for.
I would make it accessible. Opening it up and making it usable is important. So I run different groups, and we're always looking for meeting spaces. To use the Berryessa Community Center, it would run us a total of $300 to $500 just to hold a meeting. And that's too much for a community group, especially if you haven't obtained a nonprofit status yet. And that means that there's community groups that are not utilizing the space, and that means that instead of acquiring a $50 fee, they're missing out on that entire $150. So making it accessible and making it a community space that can be used is what needs to be done at all of our community centers. Not just Alum Rock, but the Mayfield is another one that's been very neglected. Most of them have been neglected.
Can I piggyback on that? Because this is not a rebuttal, but this is supporting
Well, you can use your
her
rebuttal.
statement. Okay, then this is going to be my rebuttal. What she's saying is true. The city needs to open up these neighborhood associations, open up rooms like this in neighborhood associations so that people like this can meet and bring their community together and get eyes on the street. Now, we meet at the Mexican Heritage Plaza because the council member before this council member let us meet there for 15 years for free. It's unfair that neighborhoods in blighted communities and poor communities in the East Valley have to pay. Thank you. 30 seconds. Stop.
That was a 30 seconds.
Okay, yes, thank you.
By the way, I'm hoping that the candidates will stay behind so you can further ask some more questions. There are a couple questions now that have to do with schools. First of all, how will you help Alum Rock School District regain its proper standing and close the achievement gap? Of course, schools don't fall under the city council, but it's a question that many people would like to know, that city council members can perhaps use their position to help schools in their community. So if you would take a crack at it, Ms. Inhofe.
So for Elm Rock specifically, the first thing a city council member can do is show up. Not just when there's a podium, not just when the news is there, but show up to every meeting. They should have been there a year ago, just putting the pressure, just a presence. It's almost like a parent in the room. Not only that, they don't have to have an opinion about what the school board needs to do. They can stay out of it, but they can help assemble the community, making sure that they have meeting spaces, making sure that they know when those meetings are, and making sure everyone's involved and accounted for in that conversation.
Mr. Garza?
So I cannot disagree with what she said. The city needs to get in and monitor what's going on and get the community involved, because the school districts don't. The school districts will look at the community and say, we're going to do this, and then not do it. The city needs to be actively, not monitoring, but listening to the community. There's no reason for the incumbent and the mayor to come in and say, we're going to have a beautiful, beautiful little meeting, and we're going to bash people. Like she said, this should have happened more than a year ago, mija. More than a year ago. Because both sides, Dolores and Andres, came to me 3 years ago dealing with this, and nothing has been done.
The next question is somewhat related to that, and I probably should have asked this at the same time, but that earlier question was specific to Alum Rock, but both of you talked about school districts as a whole. So would you want to add anything to describe how you would foresee your relationship with the school district and District 5? So do you want to elaborate on that?
I think something that I don't see enough of our city council members do is just show up to the school for no reason. Talk to them. Be part of their career day. I would love for a city council member to show up and say, hey, here's a career. Not just as a city council member, but as all the careers, to encourage civic engagement. Making sure your civics is reachable, obtainable, and available to all our students is the first way you build a community.
Mr. Garza?
So the council member needs to show up. He needs to be there before every holiday. There's time in his day or her day where they can go to the school and greet the kids. I don't care if they shake Santa's hand and leave. I don't care if they're dishing out a little bit of lunch for Thanksgiving. Get there and let the kids see that you care, because nobody cares here. That's why our councilwoman is not here now. Now, the other,
I would ask that you hold your applause and.
The other thing-
I've also told our candidates that we would really want to focus on what they will do and not spend a lot of time being critical of one another.
here's the other thing I would do. I would encourage and I would focus and push enough money to where our schools can have coaches for every sport. And let me tell you what I really enjoy is girls field hockey. Oh man, both my daughters played field hockey, and that is a great sport, man. So seeing girls running around with a stick lets me have respect for their technique. They know what they're doing, and we have to trust our women.
We've got two more questions, and I think we probably need to start moving toward closing. And this one, I'm not sure I understand the question, so I'm going to rephrase it as best I can because we haven't approached this yet. And that is about making land use decisions. So I'm going to ask you, this is a little, because I was on the planning commission, so curious, have you served on the planning commission, or what is your level of familiarity with land use issues, because that is very critical as we look at the long term, as well as for District 5. Land use decisions very much determine a community's future and its livability and what will happen to it. So speak about your level of knowledge and understanding of land use, and if you can give us a hint or an understanding of the kinds of land use concerns you may have or things you would decide upon if you were elected city council. Ms. Inhofe?
I have a vague familiarity with the Land Use Commission. A lot of my experience in development came from renovations, so we didn't have to deal with this too much. But one of the problems I see is that our land use right now is not taking community involvement. Decisions were made in a 40-year plan by the city, and 40 years is a long time. I think it's good to have a plan, but that plan needs to be mobile to meet our needs. I think District 5 specifically has needs that are incredibly different than the rest of the city, and so we need to have a say in how that goes. And I think being involved in that communication, and not just us speaking to that department, but also taking the department's information and bringing it back to you, the community, is the most important step.
Thank you, Mr. Garza.
Again, I agree with what she has to say. You know what? You guys don't know this. Maybe you do. There's five multi-story buildings going to be erected, or planning to be erected between King Road and Jackson. You talk about land use. Who are the developers? I know one of them is Rocket Ship, and there is no access and egress that's acceptable on Allen Rock Avenue. We cannot allow our communities to not be informed until the last minute about what's being planned. 2040, like she said, it wasn't made for us. It wasn't built for us. It was built for the other side of town. And I hate to say it, because it's not fair. They're not here. But we are, and we're suffering. And when those buildings go up, we're going to suffer even more.
Thank you. Following up on that land use question, and I think this is a commentary. I'm not sure there's a question in here, but I'll try to rephrase it into a question of some sort. There seems to be an opinion that the current mayor and city council has been, as they put it, selling out the public lands that are owned by the city to big high-tech companies like Google. And taxpayers are footing the bill or providing this land for something like Google. And then they're also making some decisions that have to do with, again, land use decisions about where this land is going to be used for. So, again, trying to delve more into your feelings and your thoughts about these kinds of critical land use issues. Now, that is one that is outside of D5. That's probably a reference to the Diridon train station area. But those are the kinds of decisions city council member will have to make. It's not only about District 5. So how would you respond to that? How would you, and what would you say, or how would you have voted on perhaps those issues, and how do you feel about that kind of decision making that's that's happening that seems outside the purview of D5?
Yeah, there definitely is an issue. The 2040 plan very clearly states that a lot of our tax revenue is intended to come from businesses. And so it's in the current administration to see that Google is going to be that huge cash cow. And they're not wrong, but the sustainability of Google is going to be vital, and it's going to be shaky, because we've seen this time and time again where a big company moves in, and then as soon as they move out, what happens to that community? We're not ready to be the next Mountain View, but we already are the heart of Silicon Valley, and we should be focusing on getting these smaller companies, these startups, here on this side of town to eliminate the commuting on the roads, to encourage parents to be home with their kids, not going downtown to Google, because they're going to just track in more people from out of town. So I think this is a conversation that does affect District 5, and we should be part of it, and there should be more conversation out there in the community regarding this.
Thank you. Mr. Garza.
The real problem is not Google. The real problem, because Google is coming, is that the city warehoused these properties for years, just waiting for a cash cow. And now our families are paying the price. Food's going up, rent's going up. Well, gas is going up, but that's another story. It always has here, right? But it wouldn't be that expensive if we had an administration that was taking care of our community here. The issue of warehousing our properties, just look at the property across the street from the Mexican Heritage Plaza on the corner. It says laundromat coming early 2018. It's not here. That property, the Kettle Garden property, and the old General Appliance building are going to be sold as a unit.
I guess I'm mentioning that so that we can think about that.
Exactly.
There are, no doubt, lots of changes happening throughout the city of San Jose, and it's been quite astounding. These are two good closing questions, I think. First of all, how will you hold yourself accountable to the many suggestions and solutions that you have shared with us today? I mean, it's easy, I think, to make promises, and I'm going to do this if you elect me, but the question here is, well, tell us, how are you going to be held accountable and that you propose today if you're elected? And we'll start with you, Mr. Garza.
So, excuse me. So, I am accountable. That's why I'm here. With those 4 pages of organizations I've served with, from First Five, before it was First Five, when it was Children and Family First, like I said, NAACP, domestic violence counselor, I am accountable to this community. I live here, I work here, I played Little League here, I wrestled and played football at Lick. I am here. I am accountable. You guys are here, gonna hold me accountable. And I am wide open to meeting every one of you anytime you want. I'm retired. I'm okay financially. So I want to guarantee that I am accessible to you.